Hello there, my name is Ismas and welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial. And today we're going to be looking at how to set up this scene here. Just some random dude crashing into another dude and giving him quite the headache. First of all, we're going to be setting up the car rig, and maybe in the next tutorial we can set up the ragdoll. Yeah, so this rig here can respond to any changes in your road. So if we made the road a bit more rough, you can see how the car responds to that. If we made it smoother, you can see it will also be smooth, and you can also change the terrain. And the car will also respond to that. So we're going to set that up, and yeah, so let's get started. First of all, you're going to need a 3D model, a car model. You can make it on your own or just download it like I did from a site like free3d.com. Yeah, so this model was made by Stuart. So if you want to send him a shout out, you can do that. Maybe it's about him in a way you can. Yeah, so I also have this second channel where I post most of my experimental videos. So if you want to check that out, you can go and subscribe to that. I usually, before I make any tutorial, I first experiment with how to do things like this, and sometimes I post the videos up on this channel, so that you can look at how I went, so that you can look at the different steps I went through to get to where I'm at right now, and you can learn a few things on what I tried and worked, and what I tried and didn't work. So you can learn a few things there. Yeah, so let's get on with this tutorial. So if you download the model, you will find that it's a single mesh with the tires still connected to the chassis. So what you want first to do, is separate the tires from the rest of the body by selecting a face from every tire, and then hitting Ctrl L to select all the tires, and then hit P to separate by selection, so that you separate the tires from the rest of the body. But we also want these tires to be individual objects, not just a single object. So go to edit mode, select everything, and then hit P, and then separate by loose parts to separate the tires into individual objects, like what we have here. So if we can hide now, because all the tires were attached to the same mesh, you'll find that their pivot point is still at the same. It's still at the original pivot point of the original mesh. And if you try rotating this tire, you can see it's being rotated at that pivot point. So what you want to do is first select all the tires and reset their origin to geometry, so that their pivot point is reset to their center. And another thing you want to do is move the pivot point to be at the edge of the tire, like that, so that if you rotate the tire, it's rotating at that pivot point instead of at the center of the tire, like this, because most of the time the hinge that connects the tire to the chassis is located at that area, not the center of the tire. You can do this for the rest of the tires, or just do it for one tire and then select the other tires. Make sure the tire you edited is this last tire selected. You select and then use Ctrl L to link the object data. That will link all the objects to this tire. But you don't even have to do that, because we're going to first set up one tire and then duplicate that tire around the other objects. So you can delete the rest of the tires and just remain with one, so that we work on this one, and then after we set up the rigging and everything, we can duplicate it to be attached on all the other, to the rest of the areas. So yeah, let's work on the rig. So what we want to do is have this tire rotate on its y-axis whenever we move the chassis forward. And to make this simpler, we're going to separate the rotation of the tires in two parts. So we have the Y rotation, this is just moving forward and backwards, and we have Z rotation, that is kind of making turns like this. So we want to rotate. Let's first work on the Y rotation here, and for that there are a few ways you can do this, either by using constraints or using drivers. So to make this easier, we're going to use drivers. So just select the tire and then right click on the Y axis, because this is the axis we want to rotate, and add a driver. So add driver, it will bring up this pop-up, and you can move your cursor away to close that, which doesn't really do much right now. So right click on the Y axis again and then edit driver to bring up the driver properties. So what we want to do is tie the rotation of this tire, the Y rotation of this tire, to the X position of this chassis. So whenever we move this chassis, we want to have this tire rotate as well on the Y axis. So to do that, let's right click on the driver again, edit it, and then in the input variable, you can delete this input and add another one, and then change the property here from a single property to the transform channel, so that we can select this object, this body here, to be the target object we want to copy the rotation from. So let me rename this to tire, and then this to car body. Then edit the driver, so we can select the car body here, so that is our target. You can see we also got kind of rotation there, but right now the rotation of this tire is just tied onto, I don't know what axis is tied onto. Let's see if we move this on the X axis and the Y axis, actually it's tied to the X axis. But if you wanted to tie to a different axis, you can just select the axis from here. But since we want it to be tied to the X axis, yeah, we are good to go. So let's open this again. You can also just right click and then open the driver editor, so that you always have this window opened somewhere, but I'm okay with having it just as a pop-up here. So so let's set this up easily. So let's give this a slight animations. So move this forward a few keyframes, and let me reduce my timeline to about 50 frames, so that I can work on the driver while I see the results here. So right now what we're saying, when we move this forward, the tire is rotating too fast, so we want to reduce that by changing the values here. So we are saying that we have a variable that is whatever value is pulling from the X location of the car. Whenever the car moves, it sends the value is moving to the variable here, and that variable we are adding a value here. I don't know why. So let's just, instead of adding, let's divide by 2 and see what happens. You can see the tire is reducing, the speed of the rotation is reducing. So let's try 5 and see it's reducing even further. Another thing we can do is just parent this tire. Let me first remove that keyframe, turn off keyframe animation. Let me select the tire and parent it to the chassis, so that we can see how it looks. I think that's reasonable. You know, let me first extrude just a portion here, so that I can go to object mode, and let me turn on random colors here. I think that's good enough. It doesn't seem to be sliding, so we are good. So we are going to run into a few issues here. Let me first remove this bulge. I just dissolve Alice's face. So uh, if this is what, if you just wanted for I'm messing up the textures here, so let me just undo this. Okay, so you can duplicate the tires, and you would be good to go if what you wanted was just forward movement like that, but because we want a more kind of advanced rig, we have to do a few more things here. So right now we have the rotation of the tire set, but let's set up also this rotation here. So if we tried to rotate this directly, you see we would run into those issues, but what we're going to do is have this tire parented to an object that is parented then to this chassis, so that we can rotate that on the x-axis at any time we want. So select the tire, shift A, cursor to selected, and then shift A, add an empty like this. I'll scale it up so that it's easier to see here, and then parent this tire to this, Control P, keep offset. Also want to make sure that it's in the center. Of the tire, so select the tire and then this, Control P. I want to keep offset so that it doesn't move when you parent it. And again, you can parent this to the chassis. You can see that's better. Now let's add that forward rotation. I don't want to, because we're going to have two tires, I don't want to always have to select this empty and then the other empty for this tire to have them rotated in the direction I want them to face. So what I'm going to do is create another object here that I'm going to use to control the rotation of these tires. So let me do something simple here. This is going to be our control object, so I'll just create it in the shape of an arrow. So let's extrude this, maybe merge at the center, and let's see, yeah. Then let me also go to the modifiers and add a wire modifier. Don't need these faces. Yeah, let's just use this, and I have the pivot point at that edge, and we're going to use constraints here. So I will select this empty here and go to the constraints tab and then add copy rotation constraint, and we'll target this as our rotation object. So whenever I rotate this, the tires also rotate, and I also want this to be parented to the chassis so that I can move forward with it and rotate it anytime I want. So if we duplicate this, let me first reset this. If we duplicate this tire and this control object, I'm just going to use Alt D, and I'll rotate this tire to be on the other side, rotate 180, push it in like that. Okay, so I think the rotation has been reversed. So let's see, why is it? I think because we mirrored, we rotated this by 108 degrees, the rotation is being mirrored. So let's first, before we rotate these, I think I can just push this outside. But I want the rotation of the tire not to be in the center, so I'm going to push this tire at the edge, to be at the edge of that hinge, and this is going to be our hinge, so that whenever I rotate this, you can see we have the rotation and the forward rotation as well of the tire. So if I rotate this, you can see. Yes, so this is what we have, and before we duplicate, I think this is no. Before we duplicate this for the back tires, we want to have ground. I want to add the ground. I'll give it some subdivisions. Just so we have ground. I want to make it so that these tires, when they move around, they respond to the ground. So let's set that up. I'll add some. Let me first give this some darker material here. I'll add a bump here. Right now you can see the tire is just going through. So what we're going to do is select this, what would be our hinge and the parent of the tire. Go to the constraints and add a shrink wrap constraint. Select this ground as the surface. You can see right now, you see it responds whenever we move. The tire also responds, but the problem, let me maybe just increase this bump just a bit, push it up a bit so that you can see that. You can see how it's going up the bump, but the tire is disappearing into the ground. So what we can do, there is a distance value here that you can use to change, to offset the distance, and we want it to be offset just a few meters so that the tire is still touching the ground. So let's see 0.5, yeah, something like that. You see it's very, very smooth. Again, we can do the same thing on this side. I think there is an option to copy constraints, so let's see if we can do that. Object, is it under relations? Apply. Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah. So let's just add the same constraint. So shrink wrap, select the surface, and then give it an offset of 0.0045. I think it was 0.45. Yeah. See, very, very easy. Then we duplicate these tires. Alt D to duplicate them and have them as the back tires. Now let me move this a bit forward so that we see how they respond to the back tires respond to. Let's see, yeah, they're working. I just need to make sure that this keyframe is working. Great. The problem is that whenever we rotate this, the back tires also rotate. So what we're going to do is select these and remove the copy constraint. So that when we rotate this, only the back tires rotate. And we're also running into an issue where if I rotate this in our axis, in a different axis, the tires will also rotate in that axis. So what I'm going to do is lock all the other axes except the Z rotation, so that I can only rotate these in that axis. And I can also add a limit constraint to limit the rotation of this so that the tires never go too far. But you can do that on your own. Just add a limit rotation constraint there to have that. So I'm going to end this tutorial here, and in the next part you can continue by adding other things are like how to control the just have a little bit more control. So maybe if you want this to spring, and I can also see the chassis itself also responds to the ground, which is not the case in our tutorial here. It's just going forward, only the tires are responding. So yeah, see you in the next part.